Be careful of the scorn of a bitter and angered woman. This is a very, very popular advice out there, although few people will speak it or give it in public, given the fact that speaking it in itself could trigger somebody if they don't understand the perspective from which you are speaking it. Today's true crime story is coming from Kuwait, and it is a story which came about due to a wife becoming very bitter, angry, and feeling like she's being used and taken for granted by her husband, and as such would end up being set on a path of revenge, and her revenge would consume everything in its path like a blazing fire. This is the true crime story of Nasra Yussef Mohammed al-Enezi, a 23-year-old wife who would end up tasting the death penalty due to what she did. If you are ready for this ride, buckle up and let's go. According to the reports, Nasra had married early due to the fact that it was more like an arranged marriage between herself and her husband, as is quite normal in some of the Muslim customs. Nasra got married to her husband and they would eventually parent 3 children. It is also reported that some of the kids had various medical issues, so it made it a bit more challenging for Nasra to take care of them as their mom. This put a lot of strain on Nasra, but she persevered and she endured to be there for her children. The years went by and Nasra and her husband were seemingly managing as a couple, managing as parents, and making it through life, all in an effort to put together a better future for themselves and their family. Fast forward, as is the custom for Muslims, sometimes the husband is allowed to marry more than one wife, and Nasra's husband informed Nasra at a point that he was going to take a second wife. Unknown to Nasra's husband, this did not go well with Nasra because Nasra felt as though she had been used by her husband, or that he had lost interest in her for one reason or the other, but she most likely suspected that it could also be due to the challenges with some of her kids medically. Feeling angry, used, and dejected, Nasra was triggered and the wheels of vengeance started rolling quietly in her mind. But Nasra played it very cool. She didn't say anything to her husband or anybody. Arrangements were put in place to prepare for the marriage of her husband to his second wife. It seemed like everything was cool. Everybody was happy. We were now going to welcome a second wife. So it seemed. But no, everybody was being fooled, because as they went about their day, looking at how to put together the best and most beautiful wedding for this second wife, Nasra was also secretly hatching a diabolical plan that would change the course of wedding histories in the country of Kuwait forever. Just at the age of 23, Nasra had become set off so much on the path of vengeance that she was going to shock everybody and end up taking over 57 lives with her plan. Events unfolded. Things were put in motion. The marriage was finally here, and the D-Day for the wedding had arrived. Nasra still seemed cool. Everybody seemed cool. Nothing seemed out of place on the part of Nasra, and the ceremony started. This was in August of 2009, specifically on the 15th day of August 2009. Now, as the ceremony was ongoing, as per the culture, at a point in the ceremony, you would have women and children only separated and put in a tent for the festivities. This would include the bride, and it was at this point that Nasra would review her diabolic plan. This was what Nasra did. When all of them were inside and she was sure that the bride was there too, Nasra would seal the only entry or exit point of the tent, pour petrol around the tent, douse it in petrol, and then set the tent ablaze. Oh yeah, the scorn of a bitter woman. It cuts deep and it has no mercy. She sets the tent ablaze, and you would expect to understand what she was looking for, but unfortunately, the bride wasn't even in the tent, and the innocent people who were in there were now trapped inside a burning tent, all because of jealousy and vengeance. Fast forward, a total of 57 people were burnt alive, to the point some of them could not even be identified, and police had to fall on their dental records to identify them. The entire tent was engulfed in flames, and it is reported that in about 3 minutes, the whole tent, which had only one exit point, had burnt down. And it was also partly because the tent did not meet the fire safety regulations of Kuwait, and this would trigger a lot of changes and regulations in that regard after this incident. This incident is the deadliest civilian disaster in Kuwaiti history in the last 40 years. So, just like that, Nasra had become a killer, a mass killer for that sort through arson. And it is reported that the temperature inside the tent at the time she set the fire was above 500 degrees Celsius. Over 57 people died, and all just to get to one person, a woman who was going to be the second wife and Nasra's rival for that matter. But unfortunately for Nasra, she wasn't even in that tent, so the whole plan missed its actual target. Nasra was arrested the following day, and she confessed to the crime. She was charged with premeditated murder, attempted murder, and arson. And just like that, her trial started in October of the same year, 2009. During the trial, Nasra denied the charges and claimed that her initial confession was under duress due to threats that she was receiving to confess to the crime. Nasra also claimed that she had lost a baby after she was given abortion pills by a prison employee who was related to her husband. That was a twist in the case because she was being considered for the death penalty, but it turns out she was allegedly pregnant, and in that case, she couldn't be executed. But strangely, some way, somehow, some days later, she lost the pregnancy, or as was reported, she was no longer pregnant, and that was when she revealed that the prison guard had given her the abortion pills. That bit of the investigation was not investigated or was not looked into, but fortunately or unfortunately, Nasra was implicated in the whole thing, despite her claims that she confessed to the crime under duress. Her defense attorneys initially pled that she was having some psychological issues, and the court at the time suggested that she seeks psychological testing for it to be confirmed whether she was actually suffering from any psychological issue, but eventually the verdict was that she wasn't. And on March of 2010, Nasra was found guilty of 57 counts of premeditated murder and starting a fire with the intent to kill, and she was subsequently sentenced to death. She was hanged at Central Prison on 25th of January 2017. She was one of 7 people executed in Kuwait on that day. Nasra and other 2 men executed with her were reportedly in a state of near collapse when the time of their executions came. I can only imagine having to die in that manner, but I can also only imagine having to get burnt up, trapped in a tent, all because of vengeance. Let's watch our hearts, let's watch our thoughts. Stay safe out there and try to resist being triggered on the path of vengeance. Subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you next time. Stay safe out there.